Imagine the world more than 500 years ago, when most of the planet was still unexplored from the European point of view, and long ocean voyages were risky, frightening, and filled with uncertainty. In this world, the ocean was considered a great blue mystery, a place where the bravest sailors tested their courage, their skills, and their beliefs about what might exist beyond the horizon. In the year 1500, a Portuguese nobleman named Pedro Alvarez Cabral prepared to cross that enormous ocean, leading a large fleet on a mission that would unexpectedly change world history. Cabral had been chosen by the King of Portugal, Dom Manuel I, to command a voyage heading to India. The Portuguese had recently discovered a sea route around the southern tip of Africa, allowing them to reach India by water. This route was extremely important because it gave Portugal access to valuable spices and trade networks. So Cabral's mission was simple in theory, but incredibly dangerous in practice. Leave Portugal, sail down the coast of Africa, round the Cape of Good Hope, and then continue across the Indian Ocean toward the rich markets of Calicut. On March 9th, 1500, under a bright sky and with a strong wind pushing the sails, 13 ships left the port of Lisbon. These vessels were not small boats, but massive wooden caravels and naus, carrying hundreds of sailors, soldiers, priests, interpreters, and supplies for many months at sea. As the ships pulled away, families watched from the shore, waving and crying, unsure if they would ever see their loved ones again. Long ocean voyages were unpredictable, and many sailors never returned home. Still, the atmosphere on the ships was filled with excitement, curiosity, and a sense of adventure. The journey began smoothly. The fleet traveled south along the coast of Africa, stopping briefly at known points where Portuguese explorers had anchored before. The sailors knew this route well because Portugal had been exploring Africa's coastline for decades. They followed the winds, adjusted their sails with great skill, and moved steadily toward the open ocean. As days turned into weeks, the ocean became their entire world. The horizon always looked the same: blue water during the day and a sky filled with stars at night. The crew passed the time repairing ropes, cleaning the deck, cooking meals, telling stories, and sometimes singing to lift their spirits. Life on board was difficult, but the sailors were used to hardship. They slept in tight spaces, shared limited food, and faced storms that shook the ships violently. Then, at a certain point in the voyage, strong winds began blowing from the African coast toward the west. These winds were part of a natural system across the Atlantic, but for the sailors in 1500, they felt mysterious. Cabral decided to let the winds push the fleet westward. Historians still debate whether this was purely accidental or if Portugal already suspected that there might be land in that direction. Whatever the reason, the ships moved farther and farther away from Africa, cutting through unfamiliar waters. The sailors wondered where they were heading. Some worried they had gone too far. Others believed the winds were guiding them to something new. Cabral continued forward, trusting his instincts and the strength of his fleet. After several days of sailing west, something extraordinary happened. On April 21st, a sailor climbed to the top of the main mast to keep watch over the horizon. During long voyages, sailors took turns performing this task, scanning the distance for storms, rocks, or anything unusual. That morning, the sailor stared intently, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks on him. But then he saw it, something different. A thin line where the ocean met the sky, but darker and more solid than clouds. He leaned forward and squinted. It was land. Real land. He shouted with excitement. And soon the entire crew rushed to the deck, pointing and cheering. The next day, on April 22nd, 1500, Cabral's fleet officially reached the coast of what is now Brazil. The sailors saw long, golden beaches, green forests stretching into the distance, and birds flying overhead in great numbers. The coastline looked untouched and incredibly beautiful. Many sailors had never seen anything like it in their lives. Some felt relief because it meant they were not lost at sea. Others felt wonder at the sight of a place that seemed almost like paradise. Cabral realized that this was not Africa, nor India, nor any land known to Europeans. It was something entirely new. As the ships approached the shore, the Portuguese saw people on the beach, indigenous peoples who had lived there for thousands of years. These communities had their own cultures, languages, and traditions long before Europeans arrived. They watched the ships with curiosity, standing confidently on the sand. The Portuguese were amazed by these people, their appearance, and their way of life. The indigenous groups were equally curious about the large wooden ships and the strange clothes of the newcomers. Cabral decided to anchor and explore this new land. The Portuguese came ashore carefully, unsure how the first meeting would go, but the initial contact was peaceful. Both sides approached each other slowly, observing every detail. The Portuguese offered simple gifts: hats, small mirrors, cloth, and metal objects. The indigenous people examined these items with interest, exchanging feathers, handmade objects, and other items from their culture. Although they did not share a common language, gestures, facial expressions, and curiosity helped them communicate. Cabral and his crew spent several days on the coast, exploring the surroundings, observing the forests, listening to the sounds of animals, and learning about the local people. They noticed the rich natural resources, the huge trees, and the red-colored wood known as Brazil wood, which would later give Brazil its name. The Portuguese priests held a religious ceremony, considered the first Catholic Mass in Brazilian territory, and wrote detailed reports about their experiences. Cabral then wrote a long letter to the King of Portugal, describing everything he had seen. He talked about the land's beauty, the friendly encounter with the indigenous people, the resources that might be valuable, and the potential for future voyages. He called the place Terra de Vera Cruz, the land of the true cross. This letter, known today as the Letter of Pero Vaz de Caminha, became one of the most important documents in Brazilian history because it recorded the exact moment when Europeans first made contact with what would become Brazil. After spending about 10 days on this new land, Cabral and his fleet continued their journey toward India, leaving behind this promising new territory. But the story was far from over. Once the news reached Portugal, it caused excitement and curiosity. A new land across the ocean? A place full of forests, water, and people? The Portuguese crown realized that this discovery had enormous potential. Over the next decades, more ships would sail to Brazil, establishing settlements, trading posts, and eventually expanding deep into the territory. Colonization would shape the land in profound ways, mixing indigenous, African, and European influences into what we now recognize as Brazilian culture. However, the arrival of Europeans also brought challenges and tragedies. Diseases that were common in Europe spread rapidly among indigenous populations who had no immunity. Many communities suffered greatly. Over time, conflicts, displacement, and forced labor changed the lives of countless indigenous people. The future of the land discovered in 1500 would be filled with beauty, cultural exchange, and growth, but also with struggles, injustices, and deep transformations. Still, the moment of discovery remains one of the most symbolic points in the country's history. It marks the beginning of Brazil's recorded history from a European perspective and the first official connection between Europe and South America in what would become one of the largest countries in the world. Today, when people look back at that moment, April 22nd, 1500, they often reflect on how one unexpected turn in a voyage to India created an event that would shape centuries of culture, language, society, and identity. Brazil became the only Portuguese-speaking nation in the Americas partly because Cabral landed on that coastline. Its traditions, music, food, and diversity are deeply influenced by the mixture of peoples who interacted there after that first encounter. The discovery of Brazil is not just a date in history books. It is the beginning of a long story, filled with complexity, beauty, and contradictions, a story that continues to evolve as Brazil grows and changes. And so, when we imagine Cabral's fleet approaching the coastline for the first time, with sailors cheering and the indigenous people watching from the sand, we witness a moment that links the past to the present, a moment that started a chapter of history still unfolding today.
Lá longe, lá em além-mar, bando de gente com medo e coragem, barco rangendo, reza no ar, buscando um atalho em plena viagem. Vento empurrando pro lado errado, o mar brincando de mudar o mapa. Um céu gigante, tudo salgado, saudade em cada gota que escapa. Quando o dia abriu na praia clara, terra à vista, grito que dispara. Oh, era só mais um ponto no mundo. Virou casa, virou sonho, virou guerra e fundo. Oh, oh, oh. Cheiro de mato, cor que não acaba, rio que corre sem saber de muro, gente que dança, pinta o próprio corpo, vive seu tempo sem contar futuro. Um traço de giz na areia molhada, um lado pergunta, outro lado estranha, mão estendida, faca guardada, sorriso largo e a desconfiança tamanha. Quando o dia abriu na praia clara, terra à vista, grito que dispara. Oh, era só mais um ponto no mundo. Virou casa, virou sonho, virou dor e fundo. Oh, na roda do tempo, quem conta a história, quem perde o nome, quem leva a glória. Nave vem vindo, canoa resiste, tudo se mistura, tudo ainda existe. Quando o dia abriu na praia clara,